This is going to be a long video, guys. So I thought I'd start off with some actual hot Lttb action before we switch to the dry technical detail of the garage. Enjoy. Well, hello there, humans, bees, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you are indeed lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and I'm back with another dose of tanking justice. This time, justice for the little man out there. For those of you who are looking to figure out which tanks are the tanks that should be putting out the blanks. And by that, I mean they should be nerfed down. I'm going to be talking about the overpowered tanks today. The just joking, ridiculous, what the hell are you talking about tanks that make people get very, very cranky and a little bit upset. I'm not just talking about good tanks. There's a lot of honourable mentions here for the 54 Mod 1, for instance, the Object 263, tanks like that. They're tanks that I think are super trollish and very, very strong. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about good tanks. I'm talking about kind of broken. And there's some that just got in by the skin of their teeth. And we're going to go through them and we're going to talk about them. And there's not a lot of them in the game. In point of fact, there's a lot of good tanks in game, but there's not a lot of tanks that I consider to be broken. And funnily enough, there's two very distinct groups and there's crossover between those groups. I'll talk about that in just a little wee while. This is a patron-sponsored post. If you consider sponsoring the channel, please think about it. It's how we keep the lights on. And there's going to be streams coming up too as well. We're going to have patron competitions too. I'm going to have a leaderboard popping on bushkaonblitz.com. Lots and lots of cool stuff. But without further ado, let's jump right on in feet first. Now, as I mentioned, this is just the ones that I think are really, really silly. There's a strong link between two groups. There's light tanks and premium tanks. And then there are premium light tanks. In fact, those two groups together make up pretty much every tank in here. In fact, they do make every tank in the review that I'm going to talk about. This is the crossover tank, and it is in by the skin of its teeth. This is the Kenny Otsu. The reason it's in by the skin of its teeth is because it only really has one thing that is broken. Well, it's got two, but you can get the gun depression of 15 degrees, which is just hilariously silly, on the standard Type 98 Kenny at Tier 3. Let me tell you the story behind the Otsu, if you don't know it, because it caused like a meltdown on the forums. I reviewed this tank for Wargaming, and I was a new contributor, and I was a little bit naive and a little bit new to the whole thing. And I said, hey, I think I've seen something wrong here. Could you please check this out? And they came back and said, no, it's good, it's good. And so it launched, and I said to everyone in my clan chat, buy this tank and buy it now. And they did. And there's a reason for that. Because the Kenny has a misplaced decimal point or something along those lines. It has 4 shells in the magazine. And the shell reload time is 0.67 seconds, which, to point out for you what that means, it means that every, 0.67 times 4 will give you 2.68. Every 2.68 seconds, you fire 4 shells. Now, the magazine reload, this is the funny part, is the broken bit. The magazine reload is under 3 seconds. So, you fire 4 shells at Tier 3, in under 3 seconds, and then you reload the whole 4 shells again in under 3 seconds. What does that mean for you? It means that you're doing 48 1.98 rounds a minute. And each time you hit someone, you do 40 damage, which gives you a total damage per minute number of nearly 2,000. To put that in perspective, let's have a look at a tier 3 tank. Just grab a tier 3 tank, the Martyr 2. The Martyr 2 has 250 hit points. I'm not making that up. It has 250 hit points. And the Kenny can output 160 hit points in 2.68 seconds, reload in 3 seconds, and then put out another 160 hit points worth of damage. So it can do 320 damage in about 9 seconds. It can take the Martyr from start to finish in about 7 seconds. That's broken. That's why it's here. And unfortunately, it's one of the few tanks in this actual review that you'll never be able to get your hands on, because they famously removed the tank from the hands of humans. You couldn't buy it anymore, but they didn't take it out of the people who'd already bought its account or garage. And this caused no end of fury on the forums. If you've seen the M60 blow-ups, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It was just like that. So I've got one. It's silly overpowered. I don't really drive it anymore. I've had a video up here of me getting a RAS in it. But it's also not as easy to drive as some of the other overpowered tanks, because it's very, very soft. And a lot of people will YOLO at you, and they can hit point trade with you. And there are tanks out there that can kill you. But look, to have 2,000 damage at tier 3 per minute is stupid. And that's why it is there. We're going to go to tier 6 now with possibly my favorite tank in the game. Let's not be possible about it. It's my favorite tank in the game. This is the VK2801. Why is this tank so good? Well, we ran some speed tests with this tank. And basically, this is a tank that has incredible speed. Like, the speed on this thing is, it can easily keep pace with the Dracula when you start out, maybe fall a little bit behind. But when you start hitting the corners and going up and down and round and through, it is just unbelievable. After you run all your stuff on it and everything, your traverse gets out to nearly 60 degrees a second. Your turret traverses at 55 degrees a second. The rate of fire, 11 rounds a minute, and you have a fantastic gun. You've got a 0.30 dispersion on this thing at tier 6. You've got just incredible armor. Like, the armor profile on this thing is silly. This is the common theme. You're going to see light tanks in there here in this that have armor, and that's like, you've got the best speed in the game, and this does. This is just like pound for pound, turning, going up, going round. It holds its speed. It doesn't lose it. It's just the best, most mobile tank going around, in my opinion. It's got gun depression. The gun on it is stupid. 7.5 centimeter, 75 millimeter waffle 0725 will give you 11.51 rounds a minute, 157 millimeters a pen on your AP rounds. That's really good for a tier 6 light tank. I mean, look at the poor old. You're going to see over here, if we have a look at the Russians, they've got a light tank called the MT25 at this tier as well, which is just, I mean, I don't really like it very much. But it's got a single shotgun as well. For some reason, it gets 125 millimeters a pen on its AP rounds at 9.63 rounds a minute. And 0.3, I don't understand either why this tank has all this stuff going for it. It's also got this really strong upper plate. The angle on it is superb. You can see there, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, the angle, if you learn to move that thing around, it's like driving an E50 that's a light tank and super mobile, and it has an incredible gun for its tier, has gun depression and light tank camouflage. And light tank camouflage is a big breaker here. Light tank camouflage allows you to basically run around the game driving 70 kilometers an hour and not getting spotted from, say, 150 meters by tanks. At tier 6 too, you're running up against a lot of guys that have stock tanks, are grinding tanks, have low crew skills, can't see very far, don't have the money for equipment. I mean, this thing just smashes them. It is easily my highest win rate. This is a 92% win rate or 93% win rate in this tank over 113 battles. I don't think I could repeat that. If I did it again today, it'd probably be 85 or 80% or something like that. But, you know, that's the kind of tank it is. And that's about the tank, not about me. And that's tier 6. Now, there's a lot of honorable mentions in this. And there are a lot of other good tanks at tier 6. But there's tanks like the KB2 and things like that, which are great, but they're derpy and they're so reliant on RNG and they don't have mobility. This tank's just got everything, okay? It's got camouflage, it's got speed, it's got gun, it's got armor, it's got gun depression. I mean, it's tiny, it fits in a shoebox, like not much else you can ask for. Tier 7, another light tank, the Lttb. This made it in by the skin of its teeth. The reason it made it in by the skin of its teeth was the damage numbers are not amazing on this tank. I use the second gun on this that will give you 8 degrees of gun depression. So again, you have gun depression. It means that you can get shots off in all kinds of situations. You have insane speed and pickup, like acceleration-wise and mobility-wise. It just flies around the place, just like the VK2801. The gun, the numbers are not quite as good as the VK, and that just goes to show, like, look at this. This is a great tank, but the VK has better pen, better rate of fire, and much better dispersion numbers. I mean, the aim time on that's 3.8, and your aim time on the VK, you can see here, is 3.8 as well, but it's got more penetration, and it's a tier lower, and it's got 0.305 dispersion. It's just a boss. The Lttb, though, has just the most stupidly troll armor profile. I don't understand. You can see how wide the VK is. Look how narrow the Lttb is. It's a tiny little tank. It moves like a snake. It really does. It's such a low profile tank in terms of actual east to west across, which is really important. I mean, that's a wide load and that's a 54 Lightweight. You can see how wide that is. Look how narrow that tank is. You can hide it behind rocks and things. You can side scrape this tank. You can side scrape the VK. It's just silly. Really, really silly. They nerfed the pen on this, and it was never the problem. The penetration on this tank is not the problem, because the penetration is something you can fix just by firing APCR. And like, if you're going to nerf something, and that's the other point, both these tanks fire APCR as their premium ammunition in the guns I use in them. And that means that you don't have to worry about spaced armor or any of those things. The penetration made it slightly tougher against tier 8 tanks, which was your only problem ever when you tier up. The other thing about this is its damage numbers pound for pound against its peers are not nearly as good. And that's why it only just made it in for me. I love driving it. I think its armor is just broken, though. It gets so many bounces it shouldn't. You can see it's got that typical Russian thing where the sides are like the shoulders either side of the track are angled away as well. And the upper glacis is angled, and you've got a really narrow turret that bounces stuff too, and it's all steep angles everywhere. Like, that's how you get auto bounce zones, and it's a light tank. And to give you an idea on why that's so silly, let's have a look at some other light tanks at tier 7. The SP1C, it's got 15 millimeters of armor all round. It doesn't have as good a mobility as the Lttb. It's just soft. Really, really soft. Lttb can, you know, it can get reliable bounces and go hull down and bounce stuff. This is another honorable mention, the Type 62. It's a brilliant tank, and it's got raw DPM off the charts compared to the Lttb. And it's got fantastic mobility, and it's got 250 millimeters of heat pen still, because it's a premium tank and it earns money, and these are crazy things. But again, the armor profile's not there. So it just doesn't quite do it for me. The Lttb is really the one that I struggled the most with on this list. Anyway, back to it. Another tier 7 tank, the Helsing. Geez, I took a bullet for this one. I made a huge error on this tank when I started it off. I drove it like a TD because it's listed as a tank destroyer. And because of that, I absolutely screwed over a lot of people. I said that you should go for the Dracula instead of the Helsing, because I had horrible RNG experiences in this thing driving it as a tank destroyer. Couldn't get over it. Here's the catch. This is a tier 7 heavy tank. It's a tier 7 heavy tank with an incredible armor profile. The upper glacis is troll as hell. You have over 300 millimeters of gun mantlet. You've got all kinds of awkward angles. So when you're driving around, this tiny little turret gets stupid bounces. It's got 400 alpha. It has a gun that will absolutely do the business, and it's got TD damage per minute. I'm going to show you what I mean. Forget Armor Inspector. Here we go. Here's some tier 7 tanks. The DPM numbers on a Tiger 1, which goes slower than a Helsing and has, very similar stats to the Helsing in terms of dispersion, but has a much worse aim time, is 2,363. The Helsing has 2,632. The Helsing has this fantastic ability to front load 400 alpha shots. Like, it's just a joke, and it gets out at 60 kilometers an hour. So you have a tank that has a turret, has 60 kilometers an hour top end, which it gets to quite easily. It doesn't have amazing traverse, but hey, if you were a heavy tank that could do 400 alpha and have 2,600 damage per minute and fire APCR as a premium round, so you can just run around firing Premo with this, doing 220 millimeters a pen, and that's not a big deal because you have 150% credit coefficient, so you never lose any cash. You would just make bank. You would smash people, and that's exactly what happens. You see platoons of Helsings all the time, and this was a reward tank from the event, the Halloween event, where you could get a Dracula or a Helsing. And basically, as soon as I started driving this thing like a heavy and forgot about it being a tank destroyer, just completely ignored it, the win rate went through the roof and the damage numbers went through the roof. I mean, you've got an 8.87 second reload time on your actual gun, which is hilarious when you look at the IS. The IS has 400 alpha. Now, usually the trade-off between a tank like the IS and the Helsing, if you have a look at 2005 damage per minute on an 11.97 second reload for a 400 alpha burst. The Helsing gets an 8.87 second reload, it gets 2,632 DPM, and it gets freaking speed and acceleration and just everything like that. And it's got better armor, in my opinion, than the IS-2. So, yeah. That's the Helsing. Completely broken. And look at the aim time on the poor old IS. 3.101 seconds. 1.86 seconds for the Helsing. 0.319 dispersion for the Helsing. 0.408 dispersion for the IS. 0.18 movement on dispersion for your turret. 0.24 for the IS. You're getting the point. IS will get up to 34 kilometers an hour. The Helsing will do 60 kilometers an hour. 1.1 is like the terrain resistance stats are crazy. And the reason I'm comparing it to the IS is because that's what it is. It is a heavy tank. It's got heavy tank armor for its tier. It's got a heavy tank gun. The gun's very unique in that it will fire off 2 rounds immediately. Like, they both fire. 0.25 seconds is the reload. So you go bang, bang. So it actually works in your favor and against you at times. Sometimes you'll fire, one will hit, one will miss. So that can be tricky. And it's really bad if you're using it as a TD at long range, because what happens then is there's a bloom between the shots. So you'll go bang, one will hit where you aimed it. The second shot, though, because there's a bloom, has a much higher dispersion and it'll hit anywhere. Well, guess what happens when you start playing it like a heavy and you get up to 100 meters away from tanks and you start side scraping, you start angling, and you start going hull down. Both shots go in. And your HE shells will both go in at times. If you can find the back of French and American tanks, and you can do 600 damage per salvo. Good game. Now we're going to move right along to tier 8, and we're going to start with another notable human who is absolutely ridiculous, the IS-3 Defender. Oh my good God. What is so special about this tank? Well, pretty much everything. It's amazing in terms of just pure bully power at tier 8. There's 2 tier 8 heavies here. We've got the IS-6 and the IS-8 and the IS-3 Defender. And the reason they're both here is they both really share a common factor. Let me just bring this up for you. Sorry. I don't want that. I want a heavy tank. What is it doing? Is it listed as USSR? IS-3 Defender? It is. There we go. All right. Here's what I want to show you. Okay. So you see on the top of the IS-3 Defender, there's this weak point, 20 millimeters. It's not nearly as easy to hit as it is on the IS-3. But apart from that, you've got these two parts here. The primary armor, you've got these plates around it, which are 110, 110, and then these ones, which are 130. They only just started modeling those two, which was a torturous thing where you would see nothing but clear shots, and then you'd see these plates that weren't there bounce your shot on the pike nose. If we go back to how that looks frontally, you'll see the actual pen numbers. So you're looking at 193, 200. You can see you need around about 200 pen just to get through it frontally. To get through the turret is not going to happen. You can see all over the place, 250, 300s, 400s. The armor profile is an absolute joke. It's so strong. You also have spaced armor on your sides. You've got these big tracks. You've got a tank that's mobile. And did I mention it has an autoloader with crazy pen? You're firing APCR at 221 millimeters of penetration. You are mobile. You have badass armor. And there's a reason that people really, really want this tank and will pay good money for it. Because it's probably one of the best heavies, if not the best heavy at its tier. The only other thing I think that I can drive tanks that can beat it, but overall, against all comers, this is the one that hurts the most because it can bounce shots off anyone that in tier 7. Like, you've got to have 200 plus penetration to get through it frontally. So if it's slightly above you and hull down, good luck with that. And it's one of those trollish tanks like the IS-8 that you think you should be able to pen, but you fire on the clear spot and it doesn't go through because Russian bias. Because Russian bias. Minsk, what are you doing? The dispersion's not great. The aim time's not great. None of that matters because you're doing all your wet, bloody work right up the front where the nastiness really happens, where the magic takes off the stink. Did I mention you've got 270 millimeters of pen on your heat? Your autoloader is a long time to reload, but that doesn't really matter because you're a heavy tank. You get in there, and if you ever want to just roll up and hit point trade, you can certainly do that. 7.5 seconds between shells. So you can do 3 shells in 15 seconds, which will give you 1200 damage. Run 2 of these together, or run 2 of them, an IS-3 Defender and an IS-6 together, and you will just hammer. It's one of the best, most common Unicum win rate power leveling platoons. Run a couple of IS-3 Defenders or 2 IS-6s or an IS-6 and an IS-3 Defender because they cover for each other's inadequacies. You're on a reload in your IS-3 Defender. Don't worry, if someone comes around the corner, they'll have to try and pen a wiggling IS-6 that also throws out 400 alpha damage that you can hide behind. Let's all side scope together. Let's go hull down. Let's be mobile. Let's just win, win, win. And that's what the IS-6 brings to the game. It has a couple of weak points. Its armor profile is completely different the way it's set up. It actually has thinner armor panels all over that are very, very... Well, no, that's not right. They're actually quite similar, but it doesn't have a pike nose. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's much more noob-friendly, although it's hard to be more noob-friendly than the IS-3 Defender, because what it does is as you turn, it changes the which bit of armor you can pen. So say I was trying to shoot the driver's hatch right underneath the gun, and the other IS-6 was turning and wiggling and jiggling and all that. The driver's hatch would be flashing from pennable to unpennable, and the area on the shoulder would be flashing from pennable to unpennable. The lower glacis would be flashing from pennable to unpennable. And all that would mean that while you're taking forever to get your shot off and you're aiming really carefully, he's shooting you, and he's shooting you very hard. And he's shooting you with 400 alpha 122mm D30 guns, or you can roll it up. I don't bother with that. I don't think you need the more pen. This is something else I've got to mention. A lot of these tanks came into their own when the new premium matchmaking came in. IS-3 Defender used to see, and IS-6 was also always premium matchmaking. But if you're in VK2801, you would have seen tier 8. IS-3 Defenders could, all these kind of tanks that could see 2 tiers up, they would struggle. You only have a C tier 9 now, and there's only a couple of tier 9 tanks that you can't pen with your Premo on the IS6 of 217. Tanks like the E75, the VK4502B, the old T54 would have been big struggle, but not so much now. These are tanks that you can't pen with your Premo. You can pen them now. This is a fantastic combination of mobility, credit earning, incredible armor profile. You can side scrape it. You can be aggressive with it. It's the original Unicum win rate. Like, how many reroll accounts have you seen that just have an IS6 defender? It rolls out, does 500 games, does it at 70-75%, and then they pay good money for the free XP. It used to free XP all the way up to a T54, and then just have another 10,000 games in that for their purple win rate. I mean, anyone can do that if you've got the cash and you're good enough. And I obviously don't feel that's a bad thing to do. Like, if that's floating your boat, if that's what makes your socks roll up and down, go for it. But this tank was that tank for a bloody reason. I mean, it's the kind of tank that you could shoot in the arse, and as it was wiggling and jiggling, the bum would auto bounce you. It still will. Like, you'll get automatic bounces because the angle is more acute than 70 degrees. Am I saying that right? Acute, obtuse? Oh, who remembers? Who cares? So there you go. That's the i6. The final tank I'm going to get through today is the T54 Lightweight. People will say, oh, it's not that great. Listen here. Listen to this. This is my reasoning behind the T54 Lightweight. The T44 is a good tank. It's a strong tank. The 54 Lightweight is a T44 that goes 70 kilometers an hour and is invisible while doing it. That is my whole rationale. If the T44 is one of the best mediums you can drive at tier 8, and it is, and is just a fantastically strong tank, then what do you make of a tank that is even more mobile? I mean, it will do 70 kilometers an hour. It has 73 degrees of traverse. 73 degrees of traverse after getting all the bells and whistles on it, and nearly 60 degrees of turret traverse. That's just stupid mobility. Absolutely stupid. Have a look at the T44. It's got 65 degrees of traverse and nearly 60 degrees of turret traverse, and does 51 kilometers an hour, and has 34 ton of weight with a 748 horsepower engine. The T54 Lightweight has 31 ton of weight, 770 horsepower engine, 73 degrees of traverse, nearly another 20 kilometers an hour in top speed, gets there quicker, same gun, same armor. Like, that's the ridiculous thing. Look at the armor profile. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Let's have a look at the armor profile of the T54 Lightweight, shall we? Here we go. Let's make the shooter a T44. STA one, that'll do. Okay, target. Now you can see here that's green up top, right? That's fine. I don't mind that at all. What I'm talking about is that the turret actually has red parts all over it. And if you angle that up and go behind a hill and move out with your turret and go backwards and forwards with that angle right there, you're going to bounce a lot of shots. And that's the angle that all Soviet mediums get used to driving, because that angle where the turret is like, where the armor is like that, will get you auto bounces. And here's the other thing. You're doing it at 200 meters, right? And what happens is you fire, you pull out. You completely re-stealth. You are completely invisible to the poor old STA one that is shooting you. You move back to your super strong, well-armored position, invisible. You fire again, and if you're very, very unlucky, he'll fire a shot off in time to actually hit you. And if you're incredibly unlucky, he'll fire a shot off in time to actually hit you and pen you. Not to mention the fact that you can go around anything in the game with that mobility. I mean, 73 degrees of track traverse is just absolutely nuts. Have a look at the god of mobility at tier 10, the T62A. It has 67 degrees of track traverse. And you go faster than this tank, and you move quick, you get there quicker, and you have much better camo. I mean, there you go. Honorable mentions in all these are there, and I may well do another video where I go through just the good tanks, but there's so many of them, really, it makes it tough to do. You can see the 44, like, I love this tank, it's great, but to have the same armor profile, basically, even maybe a little bit stronger on the turret, and to have it with all the bells and whistles, I mean, you're going to see the common thread here. I mean, look at it. The common thread is light tanks with armor. If you only understood, and if you don't get it, the incredible power of camouflage in this game, yeah, there it is. I mean, this has been a very, very long video, and I knew it would be. I haven't even included the IS-7 yet. Hang on, we've got to get to the IS-7. Here we have the IS-7 sporting the legendary battle-hardened war paint of the USSR. Yet another Russian tank. I mean, there is definitely a big thing about Russian tanks having everything: mobility, speed, armor. This is what the IS-7 has. This could be the most troll armor profile in the universe. It's got monumentally strong armor frontally. That pike nose is just a joke to get through. It's incredibly strong. The turret is incredibly strong. So you'd think it would pay for that with horrific mobility, as the Mouse or the E100 would do with their slightly less strong armor profiles. Like, they don't have as good an armor as this tank. Well, you'd be bloody wrong, because this thing manages to go 50 kilometers an hour, which is broken. It also fires APCR as its standard ammunition. It is the original breakthrough, storm the beaches, hold the choke point, bounce everyone, and then laugh at them as you collect the kills tank. And it's the only tank at tier 10 or 9 that I included. It's got spaced armor on the sides of the tank. So if someone's firing heat because they can't pen you and you're slightly angled away, they can't go through those sides because, well, Russian. Big spaced armor and tracks everywhere. Hull down, you are a monumental beast. There are slight, ever so slight, weak points about a foot either side of the gun mantlet, that if you're at range and you hit that, well, hats off to you. You deserve a absolute merit award. Yeah, it's a joke tank. It is the best tier 10 heavy going around. And if you're looking for a tank at tier 10 that just has unfair advantages over everything else, this is it. It's incredibly strong. You're going to see, if you see Clan Wars at tier 10, you're just going to see seas of these things over the next few months for competitive gaming, because they're fast, they're mobile, and although they don't have incredible traverse, they have the armor profile to just bounce. Even with Premo, there are situations where you simply cannot pen this thing frontally, which is a scary thought. I mean, if you're at tier 10 and you've got Premo, you've got well in excess of 300 millimeters of penetration, and there are situations you can put this tank in where that ain't enough, and that's a very scary thought. That's it, boys and girls. We're done. I think 30 minutes is an absolute epic. This is like back in the day when I used to do 45, 48-minute reviews, and I knew a lot less back then. So there's a lot of padding and giggle and chat. I'm Bushka Blitz. I hope you enjoyed that video. It's going to take a long while to upload. Hopefully it'll be up sometime in the next week. As always, if you'd like to become a sponsor of the channel, please do. It's really important to me to keep this channel rolling. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of all the people in it, the community that we've built. The patrons are pretty special people too, who get out there and have a great time, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. Until next time, look after your families, say good day to your mum, and stay safe on